Hello and welcome to the Bones Horror Podcast. This is our episode 55, Salem's Lot. You with us, Larry?
Yes, hello.
And Ewan?
Hello.
No Jess this week. She's at a birthday party. So, which is more important than the Bones Horror Podcast for some reason.
Shameful.
Yeah, absolutely shameful. Now, I just want to say a couple of bits. We decided that we would do this every fortnight now, just because I keep running out of time and not giving it the amount of attention I want to, really. So we've all agreed that we do that. If it picks up again, that I get more time, maybe we can go every week. But I think with every 2 weeks, especially when you're reviewing a 183-minute mini-series, you sometimes need a bit more time. So hopefully this will be better, Cyril. So we started the podcast because of lockdown and me having so much time on my hands, and it's kind of now really getting back to normal. So I think fortnightly could work for everyone, hopefully. Maybe we could do 2 films in one episode every fortnight. I don't know, but food for thought. So we need some reviews on iTunes and Apple. Same thing, isn't it? Google. If you can give us reviews, our Swedish listeners, please do. We need them, and our American listeners. And we've only got a couple out there in America, so it'd be nice to hear from you. If you don't like it, as we've said before, don't leave a review. All right.
Nothing for our British listeners, though. They can go
British listeners have given us some good ones, but British listeners, give us a review. But I don't see it. Maybe because I'm logged into a VPN all the time, but I don't see them. So, right. So, the 1979 miniseries. Before you guys were born, not me, sadly. Salem's Lot. Okay, Rotten Tomatoes. Come on.
I'm going to say...
I was surprised.
I'm going to say 50, maybe?
Yeah,
in the 50s.
I mean, you see, this is another film, I think, that developed a lot of cult status years after it was actually released. So I'm actually going to go in the 70s, which is not my own thoughts, but I think it's in the 70s.
It's actually 88.
Oh,
wow.
That's quite a lot.
Yeah. And at a budget of 4 million, as it's a TV series, I couldn't find out. There was no cinema release as far as I know. So 4 million budget was, I presume, it's quite a lot of money for 1979, I would have thought. It was directed by Toby Hooper from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it was a TV adaptation of the Stephen King novel. It starred Hutch from Starsky and Hutch as the writer Ben Mears, as you know. I'm sure you've watched Starsky and Hutch recently, Ewan.
Often.
I know you like your retro 80s, 70s.
Well, I'm trying to get into it, yeah. I'm trying to get into the sort of
Starsky and Hutch. Yeah, so it starred Hutch as Ben Mears. Jason Mason played Richard. Is it Straker? Straker.
Straker. I think it's Straker. Yeah.
Reggie Nalder as... And I can't believe this. I don't know why I didn't pick up. His name is Kurt Barlow. Now, this is the vampire. So he hasn't got like a Romanian or whatever name. It is Kurt Barlow.
Kurt Barlow, yeah. It's a bit like...
sounds like a rock star.
I don't know if you've heard of the sci-fi novel Dune, which is eventually being made now. But the main character, it's a big like sci-fi setting, big planets, and it's slightly Game of Thronesy with like houses and everything like that. The main character is named Paul.
Nice.
And you sort of got to wonder why. There's a similar case here. Yeah, the main mysterious vampire, Kurt Barlow. Very strange.
Kurt Barlow. He was great, actually. Quite.
It's like menacing.
Yeah. So I've watched this film. I bought it on iTunes so I can watch it whenever I like. It's great, isn't it? But I did do it in 3 sittings, I think, last week. So I did about an hour a night. So I really wanted to absorb it, you know.
I pulled through. I managed to go the whole 3 hours.
Did you?
I think I took a 15-minute break or something midway through because I think I needed it. And also I watched it like something like 11 o'clock at night, so I was really tired as well. So that was quite difficult.
So you finished it at 2 a.m.
Something like that. Something ridiculous like that. Yeah.
Fair play.
It was made in 2 parts, I think.
Yeah.
For TV. It was obviously the version It looked like there was parts of it that were set up for an advert. That's what I thought when I was watching it.
Yeah.
Kind of finish on then you expect some crappy adverts, but
kind of like It, the era of television. You watch
I like that as well.
Yeah, that's great. You watch it and you can tell though there's certain bits where they want to leave you on like sort of like a, fade to black advert.
It's also quite funny watching it because I recently watched the Apple TV Plus adaptation of Lisey's Story, which is another Stephen King book, and it's weird because that's the latest like Stephen King adaptation. It's also a series adaptation, and comparing that to Salem's Lot, which is I think the first ever Stephen King series adaptation. It was a weird comparison because things have changed so much. I mean, you can often notice it in movies, but when you see something that was on in the 70s on television, it's very different to how it is now. So it's quite interesting, sort of comparing the two.
This Lucy, is it? Would you say it was called Lucy's?
Lisey.
So I'm on the second episode of that. It's quite interesting. Does it get better or?
Not in my mind.
Kind of summed it up.
I mean, it sort of gets progressively worse. I think.
Did you review this as well?
Yeah, I did. I gave it 3 stars because there's enough in there.
What, out of 10 or 5?
Probably out of 10. So probably 6 boners.
6 boners. So that's not bad.
It's not bad, and there are loads of great. I mean, I mainly gave them that because the cinematography was great. And some of the set pieces were great, and the direction is really, really good as well. It's done by Pablo Larraín, who's like an actual film director. But in terms of the actual story and stuff like that, I think it was quite weak, and I think that mainly due to Stephen King adapting it himself. And I don't think authors, on the whole, are very good at adapting their own material. There are some exceptions, but in this case, it wasn't to be. I think.
Yeah. Oh no, I agree with that though. I think like that's kind of my commonplace with the Shining is that when Kubrick takes that novel and kind of creates what he wants from it, and then Stephen King goes like, no, this is the way it's meant to be, and then you watch. I think that was am I right in thinking that was a television
miniseries
adaptation? Yeah, miniseries, and you watch
I've
that
heard
and
things
just
about
think
it.
it's batshit crazy, like not in like a good way. It feels almost like you're watching. I know, again, no offense to Stephen King, he is a great writer and he does horror very well. But I just feel kind of like what Ewan said is that his adaptation almost feels like somebody watching The Shining and going, I want to try and remake that, but add like just different bits to make it a bit more wacky and crazy. And it's like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it's also weird, like what Stephen King considers good. Again, as I say, he's like one of my favorite writers, and I love reading his stuff. But often his opinions are just really out there. And I remember him saying that. Like when the Dark Tower came out, the movie adaptation of the Dark Tower, he said it was amazing and it was great. I mean, it's probably PR stuff, but still, I mean, how you can watch that film and think it's good is very confusing to me.
Painful to watch. That was.
It's
and
odd.
it's the same. Yeah, and it's a similar case with Salem's Lot. I mean, I don't think Salem's Lot is a bad movie for what it is. I think it's okay. But Stephen King, I mean, there were a lot of problems like adapting this book, and he said it was what he really liked it. He said it was really, really good. Whereas I it's fine, but I'm not I thought it was just too long.
It's very long.
At least for a movie, and even if it was, even that, even the fact that it's meant to be a TV series, I think it's also a bit. It's not detailed enough to be a TV series either, so it's kind of in a kind of weird middle space.
Oh yeah, I'm going to talk about like some of the because it was 3 hours long, and there was some little kind of in the book. I've read the book, probably you guys have, but like
Yeah,
there's some little side story. There always is other stories going on. So the one story that I quite like, but you've got the big guy. I can't remember his name, and his wife, and she's having an affair with her boss. And I think has that got really anything to do with what's
No.
going on?
Well, this is the thing: is that
So
is that when I read that in the book, I thought it fit quite nicely because it suited the atmosphere which King was trying to bring, and it was like for him it was like an early example of his world building, which he builds on, like in stuff like It and The Stand, that sort of small town atmosphere and stuff like that. But with this one, they didn't really build the town very well, and they had to sort of, chop and change everything because obviously they needed to compress the novel down. But they chose this one, and it just felt really out of place and superfluous.
it does. It feels totally separate, and also the guy who sits outside the shop or something. The weird one.
Yeah.
With the eyes. I don't know. It just didn't make sense, but I found it quite entertaining. Like filler, certainly was. But yeah, the guy even commenting on the other guy's fancy boxer shorts or whatever. There was just some funny stuff in it that amused me anyway. Did he shoot him? I don't think he did he? Did he just chase him out of the house?
Yeah, I can't remember because I think that might have been different from the book. Because I think in the book he does shoot them.
Yeah.
See, I haven't read the book. I haven't read Salem's Lot. I've read it. I've read that actually like more than once. Which I do, but I do find it quite interesting because I have not read the book Salem's Lot, but there's a description of the master vampire that is identical to what Pennywise changes into in the book. So a lot of people speculate that it's Pennywise is the main thing, which I mean, it's a nice little but I don't think maybe
but it's
it was
weird
written
though.
with the intention.
I mean, I'm not sure if that really works. Because,
No, exactly.
Pennywise, but Pennywise only operates in Derry, doesn't he? Really?
Well, yeah.
Sorry, this is really sort of Stephen King lore now.
yeah. No, that's the thing. I also find though that there's a lot of times with ever Stephen King's work, you do have a fair few people who are like, oh, it's obviously they are connected. I know they're all connected in certain ways, just like in little ways. Yeah. But a lot of people do hang on to that fact of like, oh yeah, it's Pennywise, and it's like, yeah, okay, it's not Pennywise.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
in the just because I read back through this because it was a long time ago, I read the book, and he's meant to be like a type 1 vampire, which are more mutant-y looking things. But in this, he looks more human. I know he looks weird, but he's still human shaped.
Yeah, I mean, that was I think it was a point of controversy for fans of the book. Yeah. I think in the book, he was meant to be he was meant to look like a German count, kind of, sort of quite gothic and quite sort of, I suppose, traditional in that way. But in the movie, they sort of went back to a kind of Nosferatu.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's very reminiscent of Nosferatu.
And I think a lot of people didn't like that because I think they found it a bit stereotypical, I guess, which is sort of kind of different from the book, I guess.
But well, we steer clear of the book and just take it for what it is.
Yeah.
I had fun with it. I'm not going to lie. I quite enjoyed it. I think the child actors were pretty they were good. little kid in the coffin, and
Yeah.
the famous scene with the windows, at the window. And it was good. My son, my 12-year-old, watched it with me. He enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, I
He
think
did.
it's a funny thing, really, because I think the bits that are scary are good bits,
Yeah.
and I think those are good to sort of hang on to. And again, that's sort of I think that a few of them are directed very well. So the bit in the coffin where I think it's the gravedigger who's essentially sort of tempted inside the burial, and then he opens up the coffin and it's the kid with vampire eyes and stuff like that. I thought that was directed really well, especially with sort of there's barely any music in that scene, and I think that's quite good, especially for that time. To have I mean, I think that whole scene should have taken the music away altogether, and that would have been more effective. But I think working to whatever the studio wants, that having no music there is a good choice. And as you say, the famous scene when he's at the window, that's very effective. But problem with it is just it takes a long time to get there, and I'm all for building atmosphere. It's just. It was just a long time to wait, I think.
So the film kind of starts with a scene from kind of the end, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So they're kind of on the run
in Guatemala.
Guatemala, and they've got their holy water that glows whatever blue, is it?
Yeah, it glows blue when vampires are close.
Brilliant. So. Obviously, after they kind of kill off Kurt, right? He don't look like a Kurt. It's amazing. I just find that hilarious. That this thing is called. He couldn't even talk, could he?
No.
Called Kurt. So he kills him, and then obviously all the other top vampires are trying to hunt them down. What are your thoughts? And I really like the character. The guy. And why he was looking after Kurt, I don't know. But the Richard Straker, I thought he was great, and I'm sure I've seen him in other things that I thought he was great.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I mean, it was James Mason who played him.
Yeah.
And he's been in so many classic Hollywood films. He was in Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of Lolita, and he was very good in that. And I think he's probably the most vivid presence in the film. Just because it's funny seeing him there because I mean, again, I'm not that well educated with James Mason, but I feel like it's a role that is clearly a kind of late career role for him. I'm not, it's pointless being pompous about vampire movies and horror movies and stuff, but because he was a classical actor, I reckon it's probably not something he would have done early on in his career, but because it's sort of later on. But he's great in the role. I think he's so vivid and quite scary and so ambiguous, and I think from what I remember of the novel, I think it captures that character quite nicely.
He was great. I played it so well. Even when they met in the street, and even the scenes with him and the policeman taking his suits, and it was just all quite sinister in a way. Just really, really good. Like you could feel the energy between the policeman and him. I loved it. Loved all that. Could have done
that is
more
one thing. Really. That's one thing that the film though does really well. I find is that when it, like we just said a minute ago, when it wants to be, it can be. There are scenes that are like, this is terrifying. Like this is, I mean, we've already mentioned it once, like window scene. I also love the scene where I forget his name, but the matey is on the chair, sat in the room.
Oh yeah,
just
the chair
with the cross and gets him out the window and stuff. And what I really enjoy about the film. Is very much that the vampires in it, it's more perceived as like I wouldn't say like a virus, but more like they don't have that natural-esque vampire-esque look. It all looks kind of like it's like a spreading virus, which doesn't surprise me that George A. Romero was set to direct it first. which I would have would have been interesting to see how he would have tackled this.
I think I would have preferred to see that.
Yeah, so I do a little bit.
Because I think Romero wanted it as a sort of as a film, and he left because it was being adapted into television. And I think Romero would have stripped down the budget, put it to about an hour and a half, and just sort of like, you know, had a lot of fun with it. But I think Tobe Hooper. It's funny, Tobe Hooper. Again, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of my favorite horror films ever made, and I really love it. And you can even see sort of portions of that in this, especially when they go inside the house and there's loads of like feathery stuff on the floor, which pretty much is the same one as, like, you know, the Psycho house in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But I feel like he's, I don't know, that I haven't seen many of his films, but I feel like he hasn't really returned to that, or he hadn't returned to that sort of zenith of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, again, it's the same with like Poltergeist. I wasn't really a big fan of Poltergeist.
No,
and also I don't think he was really that involved in Poltergeist, was he?
No.
Although at least
although I do really like the original Poltergeist. Like, I only like that though because that was very nostalgic. Of like, there was obviously, like, without going on too much of a tangent, but like scenes, again, kind of like linked with this, but there are scenes that have that similar feel where, you know, with the whole mirror and and they have that similar feel. But yeah, no, with, like what you said with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that film, like you say, there are parts in this that have very similar aesthetics, or very similar kind of like just shots and how things are framed, and it's those things that I just wish would have propelled more, because the sad part of it is that for every scene you get where it's like, this is really scary or this is really good, there is then juxtaposed a scene where you're like kind of hitting your head against the table, like, come on.
There's so many scenes that were just unnecessarily long, and you just sort of like, okay, get to the point.
Do you think? Do you think his hands were tied a little bit with this film? Because like Tobe Hooper, you always think, well, I think it's quite violent and quite raw, and this film doesn't feel like that. Well, I say there are tiny parts. Do you think there is a director's cut of this? It's, you know, or do you think it was just, you're making it for telly? Here's a load of money.
Well, I think that's true. I think he did have to, like, he couldn't show blood on TV, and or anything like that.
Isn't gory at all? Is it? Is there any gore in it?
Not really. I mean, it's other than sort of biting on the neck, which is weird as well, right? I'm guessing. I mean, it's funny. I don't know if this is because, you know, we watch lots of films, Lawrence, or because we were, you know, did 3 years at university doing films. But you can clearly see that in a lot of the shots, it's in reverse but pretending it's forward.
Oh yeah, that's one. There's like other like little things as well you pick up on where you're like, this is confusing me.
Okay,
right. So... I'm not having this. You're not talking about stuff going backwards. And right.
Okay, so for example, in the, you know, the
they talk backwards as well.
No. Well, in the famous scene where he's at the window and you get all the mist on the on the backwards. To me, that's clearly that's clearly film that it's clearly edited in reverse in order to make it look like it's going forwards, but actually it was filmed inversely the other way.
So they would filmed it. They would have filmed it the other way, and then at the editing room they would have reversed the footage so that then it gives the impression that it's forward.
I don't know why they did that.
No, but then this is kind of there's other things in the film that really kind of baffle me a bit, in just kind of like choices of like, okay, like there's I guess he kind of wanted to go for that sort of, as I don't know, that effect, to give it that sort of menacing feel.
Yeah.
And it works, but it's just, it feels odd, and not in a way where it's like, oh.
I mean, I wonder because Carrie was obviously made before this, the Brian De Palma adaptation of Carrie, and there's a shot in Carrie where she's essentially, I think she's walking to the house that's been destroyed, and De Palma actually filmed her walking backwards and then inversed it in the edit to her walking forwards. I'm not sure why. I think it was just to create that kind of menacing thing. And you sort of wonder whether Tobe Hooper was inspired by that.
Yeah, I feel like he probably...
Yeah, or he's just trying to save on special effects, but I don't know how that would save on that in terms of money. I'm not sure.
Again, without veering on too much of a tangent, but like another big another big kind of flaw I have with this film, which I'm surprised, with the director and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is that like it's when you watch like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it has this very like raw, real feel to it, where just in the sound design alone, when something happens, I won't try and bloody make the sound, but there's this like horrible screech sound, like a record player going off or something. And I was a bit like, I've seen this now twice, and once a while back, and then obviously for this review, and I'm just surprised that he didn't take more of like that approach as well. And I'm guessing it's because of the TV aspect, which, but then half of me is like, I feel like if you're going to give it to a director, and especially someone who's, with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's almost like give them free reign. But to answer your question a minute ago, no, I don't think that there's like a director's cut. I think that this is very much just like run of the mill.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think. I do think, and it's a little bit guesswork on my part, but I did read that that the international version, I'm not sure what that applies to. Apparently, the international version is an hour shorter than the original television broadcast.
Yes,
and I looked on IMDb.
I
looked on IMDb that one episode is 2 hours and the other episode is 2 hours. So I wonder if there's been a significant amount chopped. But it's funny. It's funny if that's true. Then there was even more guff to work with. That's that you have to wade through in order to get to the scary bits. Unless the other hour is just all the scary bits, but they just took out all the scary bits, which I doubt happened.
No.
So, what's your honest thoughts then? Like, if we were to score this, did you enjoy it?
I mean, I enjoyed the bits that were good.
It was
a
first watch for you, Ewan, wasn't it?
It is a first watch for me,
Yeah.
and to be fair, I did like some of the setup, even though if it was a bit cheesy. So the whole sort of relationship between the writer and the Susan, I think she's called,
Didn't need to be there.
That whole meet cute was really weird. Him just bit behind a tree, just looking at her. It's kind of, I get it's it's TV from the 1970s, but it's just a bit creepy.
Yeah.
But
that's how it was. That's how being romantic is. Nowadays, you just do it by a camera, don't you? Or, I don't know.
Yeah.
Back in the old days, we used to sit on by trees and talk to each other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so I kind of, I was all right with that stuff. It was just all the stuff that just didn't need to be there. I mean, in terms of, and also I don't think I'd really rush to see it again. But if, like, I don't know, a year down the line, I was obligated to watch it again, I probably would. It's just, but again, I'd probably do what you did, Kev, and just have it in 3 sittings.
Yes, that works all right, actually. It worked all right. I probably would have liked to have watched all of it. I just don't get enough time. But, like, putting 3 hours aside for a movie, unless it's like it or something,
Yeah, there has to be enough happening.
Or you're at the cinema, I suppose. But, yeah, it's a long time, isn't it? 3 hours.
I mean, in terms of boners,
yeah,
I'd probably give it 6. And I feel that's slightly generous, but I think I enjoyed enough of it in order to keep entertained. But it was just too long, so I'll probably give it 6.
I don't know if Jess watched it. I gave her access to my account, so she should have watched it. But whether she did or not, I don't know. So She hasn't let me know what she thought.
That
about you?
doesn't sound promising.
No.
I just find that if I had to sum it up, I
can
think
feel a 4 coming here.
No. I'd actually, so for boners, I would actually agree and say a 6. I think that there are some really good parts in it, but there are also some really fucking dull parts where you're just like, what, this could be sped up. But then what I would say is that if you've not seen it, give it a watch, definitely. But once you have seen it, just go on YouTube and find the good bits, because you're not missing jack shit with the other bits. Like, I think definitely if you've not seen it.
Although I would say that before I came on here, I decided to remind myself by watching these clips again, and you really need the context and the atmosphere in order to make those bits work.
Yeah.
Like I watched the bit with the rocking chair again. Where he says, look at me, and I was scared at the time when I watched it with the movie, but watching it back, it just looks so camp. It just looks like, look at me. It's just,
I'd give it again. I'd give it 6. It entertained me. Right. I've done an intro for this, so on the podcast is slightly different, but I took a clip from what I thought was my favourite part of the movie. And it's basically where Kurt has got the young lad by the head, and Straker, whatever his name is saying to the vicar or priest, wherever he is, that, we'll do a deal. And I could really like that scene, actually, because it's quite Straker that is really good, saying, like, you give us, he wants you, and we'll let the boy go. So anyway, that's in our intro. But that was kind of my favourite bit, and it's quite atmospheric, I think, for that bit. But yeah, it was good. Good, 6 boners. Watch it. Well, I own it now, so I'm gonna have to watch it every few years. So it's got to be done. Though it wasn't very expensive. So that is a 6. Then 3 6s. No, nothing from Jess. It's pretty good. It's up there.
6.
No, that's
666. Number of the beast.
Oh, and a tidbit of information. The original title, I believe, I believe it was the book first, was called Second Comings.
Yes. Well, no, Second Coming. I don't think it was Second Comings.
Oh, sorry, Second Coming.
But I think you're right.
I'm glad it changed.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. I think the reason why he went for the other title is because it could be mistaken for a porn book.
Yeah, well, it does sound it when you hear it. It's like Second Coming.
Anyway. So, shall we move on to what we watched in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah.
What have you been watching?
Yes.
Oh, seriously.
My list is pretty big.
Now, I did something.
Oh, good.
I went to the cinema.
Yay!
Right? So I went with my son. He's 15, nearly. So I tried to book us tickets for The Conjuring 3, okay? Now, I could have had them, and I delayed it, and when I went to get them, they were sold out. But it was in a smaller cinema, okay? One of these Cinema Deluxe ones. But it was in a smaller screen, I should say. So then I looked at, because he had said to me, Dad, I want to see A Quiet Place 2. So I looked at that, booked it, and off we went to see A Quiet Place 2. And I loved it. I really did. And he loved it. And I'm not going to give anything away, but I actually prefer this version to the first one.
I would agree with that.
I think there's more to it. I think certainly, what's the main character, the male?
Cillian Murphy?
Yeah, I think he was amazing. I think he's amazing in most things I've ever seen him in. But I think in this, he was brilliant.
It was kind of like
it's
kind of like a return to sort of like, 28 Days Later, Cillian Murphy, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Sort of that.
Because Peaky Blinders, it was okay. It's like people rave about it, but it's not really my thing. I've watched 2 or 3 series of it. But it's okay. He's good in it every time. But I think was he in Red Eye? Was it Red Eye he was in? That's one I remember. He was on an airplane. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I think he's stalking some woman on an airplane. Anyway, that's another. I think it was called Red Eye. I might be wrong, but that was good. So, Quiet Place 2 I loved. Now, then I watched Conjuring 3, but not at the cinema.
Okay.
And I'm the whole Conjuring, even the Nun, I like them all. So I'm thinking, this is going to be great. And I was really disappointed. Really disappointed. Have you seen it yet?
No. I mean, from what I've heard, though, I mean, this is mainly from Mark Commode's film review, but he seemed to say that it's based on a true story, as we've discussed in previous weeks.
Oh, they all are. Absolutely.
But apparently, it was based on a case where
it's definitely the bloke's free, isn't he? Now, I think.
Yeah, but it's a court case where one of the defenders saying this guy was actually possessed by the devil, and the judge was like, no, he wasn't, because that's not possible, and we can't put that in law. And in the real story, that was the end of it. But in The Conjuring 3, there was more that was expanded from it, apparently, and that's how it goes. I haven't seen it, keep in mind, so I can't judge about how good it is. But yeah.
I need to watch it again, and I will add it to my collection. And I don't know if I was just literally, it didn't have that feel of the other two. And people kind of slate the first one I find amazing. The second one I like a lot because of the Nun. Larry, you might not, but for me,
that's
you know what I mean? I'm not the most clever bloke in the world, so it does it for me. I understand what's going on. There's no little hidden things going on in this.
No. I just find kind of what you guys, like how you summed it up there is actually, like, you know, I know as probably from my last rant on Conjuring 2, but it's just very simple in that, like, when you're dealing with such a thing where you're like, this is based on a true story, if you actually go back and look at the story that they focused on with Conjuring 2, it is actually there are certain things about the true story where you're like, it's and there are bits that I perceived as scary, but it's also just kind of like, it makes you think of like what was really going on. And what I imagine has happened with this film is that they've taken a real case where you'd look at it and go, okay, that's quite interesting. And then they go, let's shove 50,000 ghosts in, and the devil's going to walk on the roof, and he's going to blow up the house. And you're just like, stop. You're like make... That's my problem. I like the first one, though. The first one I thought was very entertaining, and it actually did stay true to like real fact in certain cases.
I think it had a different tone for me. It felt different. Certainly with the violence parts of it, because I don't think there is much violence at all.
It wasn't directed by James Wan, was it? Again,
no.
The first one and the second one were
the bloke who did that Curse of Llorona or whatever it's called.
That explains
that didn't do very well.
Also, just a sort of side point, there's a new Salem's Lot adaptation coming out, and the person directing it is the same person who did Annabelle Comes Home.
I like that.
I haven't seen it, so I can't comment.
I don't mind it. The girls are great.
Fucking that doll again.
Lawrence's face.
Again, the real story. If you want to be scared by a good, like, chilling story that could be all bullshit, like Annabelle, the original story of that is good, and they actually cover it pretty well in The Conjuring 1. But then what they've done is they've gone marketing. We want to have it where Annabelle is this demon who has creaky, crawly legs, and whoa. And it's just, I get it. If it's your thing, watch it, like, enjoy it, please. But for me personally, I can't sit there for an hour and a half watching a doll
So I bought this young lady the other day. Isn't she beautiful?
That's not
Hey,
even
look
what
at
she. That's not what she looked like. She was a raggedy. She was a Raggedy Ann doll.
That's
like
the com-
that is not. That is
Oh,
James
she's lovely.
one.
She's lovely. Oh, I love her. I saw her and thought, I've got to have you. So, so I'm just going through my little list here. I watched A Quiet Place, the first one. After watching the second one, I thought, I better watch the first one. So it's a great film. So I bought it again on 4K. So I might watch that next week in 4K. See if that's any better. And last thing, I finished Resident Evil 2. So I finished that. It was great. Really was. I started doing you play as the girl as well, and it's pretty much the same, so I gave up. But I finished that. It was quite hard at the end. And I'm working my way through Resident Evil 3 and Alien Isolation still. So
Yeah, that's a great game.
yeah, so that's what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks. Ewan.
Well,
So-
I'd have to filter out because I've seen a lot of stuff.
Oh, I can imagine.
But firstly, I mean to sort of something that came out last week, Loki, which I thought was actually surprisingly good. I mean, again, I'm not. I've seen pretty much all the all the MCU movies and pretty much all the DC movies, but I'm not really a big fan of superhero movies. And the funny thing with Loki is that, and Lawrence might know my thoughts on this, is that at least in the cinematic universe, because I haven't read the comics, I've never really considered Loki all that interesting as a villain. I thought he's an amusing comic relief occasionally, but I think as a villain to actually fear, I've never really got to terms with him. But in this series, I've really enjoyed watching him, and I found him really interesting, and the whole sort of like looking at his why he's evil, the reasons why he has tried to be a dictator to people, and it's that typical sort of fascist thing, is that people don't want to think for themselves and they want people to think that think things for them, sort of thing. I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was really funny as well, especially with his chemistry with Owen Wilson, who play because he's Loki's
Owen
thrown.
Wilson's in it.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
wow.
so Loki's thrown into
Yeah.
a kind of to these kind of like managers of time. It's like a bureaucratic system of these like people who try and control where time goes and make sure everything follows a deterministic path and try and stop people who stray from that path. And I also really like that because it just reminded me a lot of Doctor Who, and I really like Doctor Who, so it kind of fit for me, I think, and I could understand a lot of what they were saying. And it's funny as well because obviously it's a mainstream series, it's Disney, it's Marvel and everything like that, but every so often it just goes off into like these 5-minute really philosophical dialogues, and I'm just like, this is great, and I'm loving this. It's amazing.
I love that. I love that as well about it. It's when they do that, like the whole thing about free will, and like if everything's determined already, then is there such a thing of free will?
Yeah.
And how and this isn't a spoiler to say, I don't think, but like I love how they, as you stated in it, like they have this timeline that they consider as the sacred timeline, and that you cannot veer from that timeline, like that path. But no one's ever really seen the 3 space lizards that are controlling the timeline. So I just love that idea of
I haven't started this yet.
It's
So,
great.
yeah,
Yeah,
I look
honestly,
forward to that.
it's so
fun.
good.
Yeah. So I've been watching that. I've also watched some really kids stuff. So I've watched The Mitchells and versus the Machines, which is the new sort of animation from Sony, and it's now on Netflix. And I didn't know really what to expect from it, but it was really, really fun. It's just about basically machines taking over the world, and this family is kind of most of this family is obsessed by sort of their smartphones and stuff, and the basically this sort of Silicon Valley type sort of Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs kind of guy creates this new software, these robots, and predictably he sort of, the machines take over. And but it was really enjoyable. It was really funny, and especially for me and probably you too, Lawrence, in that the central character is someone who's about to go to film school. and she
Nice.
creates all these really sort of funny amateur videos and stuff like that. And it was just like, I mean, I never really created those videos, but I could understand, that kind of that youthful drive to like make movies, but not having the budget to really make anything that's too great. And it's just great. So I watched that. That was great. I also watched Luca, which is the new Pixar movie, which is about two teenagers in the Italian Riviera who are actually mermaids, but when they go onto the surface land, they turn into humans. But the humans on the land think that mermaids and sea monsters are evil, so they have to sort of carry off the disguise. It's a really lovely Pixar movie. It's very small in comparison to everyone else, but but I found it really interesting because it's clearly, at least from my perspective, they're both 13-year-old boys, but I think it's clearly a gay relationship. I know. I mean, I might be looking too much into it, but it seems like it's just clearly to me. But they couldn't, because we're still in that kind of, at least with Disney, are kind of like reticent to actually say that they're gay or have any characters who are explicitly gay. At least at this point in the sort of Disney history, they've sort of scraped it under the carpet a little. But it's a lovely film, and I recommend it. Also, I've been replaying Final Fantasy X, which is just great. I mean, I have been playing it for the last 20 years and I've never completed it. But I just got to a point where I was just like, I need to play this again because it's just so. And also, it's one of those things where, like, especially with Final Fantasy X, I think at least for me, it was like the first time when like games became emotional, or at least there was a story that had loads of character and emotions behind it, and I'd never really experienced that before. And you still get it with games now where it's sort of like they're still developing, and like I think The Last of Us was also a sort of a key point where games became seriously emotional, and so I've been replaying that and it's been great. I've watched loads of other stuff, but I'll keep it to that. I'll keep it to those.
Yes. Cheers,
Okay, so I'll try and I'll keep mine similar. So I went on to Disney Plus because basically I was like, right, obviously Disney have their stereotypical Disney kind of content. But I was surprised because I went on there and started seeing a lot of these options for films where I was like, there's, a film I haven't seen in ages, or like, there's this new film. So I went on Disney Plus, and the first one I watched was End of Days with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That's a great film.
It is a great film.
That's a great film. I like that one.
Is that another classic sort of Arnie B movie from the 80s?
No. Yeah, but it's not really a B movie. It's very much like it. So it's to sum it up, basically, the devil is going to like reincarnate himself very much. So he's going to, in the year of 1999, when it hits 2000, the devil has to basically have sex with this girl. And it has to happen an hour before.
Yeah, this is really A-movie stuff. This is really A-movie stuff.
Oh, no.
Was it on his kind of
so
downward?
Good.
Was it like he'd obviously hit a peak? I'm sure it was like, I don't know if he was in politics then, but like it was on,
No.
I think there had been a gap between him at his very peak of his powers. It was definitely on the downside, if I remember rightly, because it was an odd one. It was an odd pick. It was an 18.
Yeah, it's surprisingly very. But then, to be fair, like I don't know if it was on his downside. Like what's the Commando, I believe that he did was also like an 18. Predator he did was also an 18. It's very much in that similar vein, but it's it is cheesy, but I had seen it ages ago and I could not remember a thing from it, so I whacked it on. And then that led me down this kind of path where I just kind of binged watched a few movies. So I then watched Unstoppable with Denzel Washington, directed by Tony Scott and Chris Pine. Great film. It's kind of just like a very, again, based on a true story, except it's actually accurate. And essentially it tells the story of a runaway train that these two train operators had to stop. But it had to do it in such a certain way because the runaway train would pick up speed and more speed and was going into more populated areas. So that was really good. Then I watched Sunshine. I've only
is that Danny Boyle?
I'd only ever seen that film in parts because it was always like it was on the TV and I would always see certain bits and I'd never watched it fully, completely all the way through. I thought that was really good and effective. I thought it was. It's quite scary as well.
Yeah, it's Cillian Murphy as well, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, yeah. And I was going to mention it when you were mentioning him, but I thought I'd wait. But he's like again fantastic in that. Chris Evans is in it as well. There's quite a few well-known actors. Chris Evans.
From Radio 2.
No, not TGI Fridays, Chris Evans.
The radio DJ. Not the radio DJ.
That would be a great appearance.
Radio DJ. So Captain America, basically, but in an earlier stage.
Yeah, or the Human Torch.
That must be quite annoying to have to name as the name of someone that famous from the UK. You know, he's very famous, Chris Evans, isn't he?
Yeah, but I don't think you'd like
it'd be
mistake him for being in the Avengers. Do you know what I mean?
No.
I'm sure our American listeners would have heard of the Big Breakfast and things.
I think that was even before my time.
Then I watched Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Number 3.
Yeah, I think for me personally, like I you can't beat the first one. It's a fantastic film, but I also really appreciate the third one for actually having a story that could have been its direct sequel, but it doesn't ever feel like it's just a sequel because like I buy the story in it very much, which is like a revenge plot of the villain from the first one's brother. Spoilers, but no spoilers because it's bloody been out for ages. And then finally, I was away for a bit, and while I was away, we watched like just some like had like a day or evening where we'd have a film on and just in the background kind of thing. But a film was put on called Calendar Girls, and I've never seen this film.
I've heard of it,
and I actually have to say that it is a very kind of just feel good film. Oh no, trust me. If you want a film,
I'm sorry, listeners. I really am. You don't want to be watching that.
Oh no, trust me. You would you'd sit down for that hour and a half, and trust me, you will get just like again. When I say like it's not the best film in the world, but for a film of that kind of caliber, and I guess what it would try, what it was doing for when it came out, I actually thought it was very, very well done, and I thought the acting in it was really good.
My wife would
underlining
watch that
story
and say, "Kev, this is really good. We need to be watching this. It's 9 boners." And I'll be like, nah.
That's Celia Imrie, isn't it? Celia Imrie, and
I have seen it. It's just
it's got loads of like cast members from it. So like from Ashes to Ashes, I forget his name.
It's a comedy, isn't it? As well.
Lannister.
Is it a comedy?
It's like a comedy drama.
Yeah.
So it's like it's like funny like in that sense. But what I really appreciated about it was that it actually had a really nice underlining story to it. That not only was like enjoyable, but also like it was just something where I was like in the background watching and just thought, no, I kept finding myself going like, this is actually a very good film, like for when it came out of the time. Because I don't know the year of when it came out, but it was
I think it was in the noughties, wasn't it? Yeah, sometime.
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way: the governor from Ashes to Ashes and Life on Mars, he is so much younger in this, to which I was like, that's fucking him from Mars.
So I have a couple of old ladies with some strawberries placed in a certain place or something so you can't see them. like fully.
They're
I mean,
trying-
that's one scene.
They're
Yes.
trying.
That's not the whole film, but cool.
That's what this film is. So some old ladies with some strawberries placed in front of their breasts.
Yeah, they're trying
So
to
you
raise
can't see
money
them.
by doing.
Yeah, I was just about to say they're trying to raise money for basically the fact how one of the characters' husbands has passed away. I believe due to
There is a
cancer.
serious aspect to this.
And yeah, the idea is that they want to do a calendar, but the whole village is very much like, no, we can't have nudity like in a calendar. But again, I would say to people, if they've not seen it, to actually give it a watch, because it's a very well put together film, and the cast, I think, is.
So does anyone die or get sliced up or?
No, there's no. There's James Wan didn't direct this, so he there's these calendar girls don't suddenly grow wings.
Lorraine
and
Warren.
then...
No.
So Lawrence,
Lorraine Warren.
Lawrence, I've got a question.
That was really good.
Will Calendar Girls be your selection for next week?
No. I've got because I believe, as we said, if we're picking two because of our fortnight,
Yes.
I have two picks.
Two movies. This is going to be great.
Which can go on to. So I guess my two picks are going to be one of my all-time favorite horror films, which
Calendar
is...
Girls. Yeah.
No, Starship Troopers.
Oh yeah.
It essentially, yes, it's got like comedy elements and it's got like kind of a cheesy aspect, but it's one of those films that I feel like if you've not seen it, you need to, because it's made by I forget his name, but the director of Total Recall,
Yes.
and the likes, and it's
Paul Verhoeven. Paul Verhoeven.
you know what?
I think that's who
right
did Total
here.
Recall, but I don't.
It's right here.
Is it still
Paul Verhoeven. No. Paul Verhoeven. Yeah.
yeah,
Paul
and-
Verhoeven.
Yeah.
He did
So that's
Basic Instinct as well, I think.
Yeah, he so I think his like effect works is great, and it's fantastic. And then I'm going to pick The Lighthouse.
Oh, I expected that would be coming.
Yeah, because
I'm watching the
that-
English version. I'm going to watch the British version. I prefer it.
oh good lord, not that fucking criminal.
Got the Welsh fella in it. I like it. So, wait.
Don't burden yourself,
I watched,
please.
I can honestly say I watched both of them because reason being I wanted to watch The Lighthouse and I put it on and it was the wrong one, wasn't it? So like, so I watched it and I thought that was really good. And then I watched the second one and a few blokes locked in a lighthouse.
The sequel.
Eyes pecked out by birds. That one. Yeah.
But again, based on an actual true story.
I'm sure Lorraine Warren turns up at the end. I can imagine it.
I would really hope not. I would think that film would be a lot lower in my books.
That'd be kind of a twist, though, wouldn't it? What a twist that would be.
It would definitely be a twist. It'd be a twist, not a good one.
So anyway, next week, in a fortnight's time, we'll be back with our episode 56 with the very similar films, Starship Troopers and The Lighthouse. So if you want to follow us...
Two opposite watches.
I'm looking forward to it. I've seen both, and I am looking forward to them. So maybe I'll appreciate The Lighthouse a bit more on second watch. So,
be interesting to see what you think.
Yeah. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, it's the Bones Horror Pod. Facebook, Bones Horror Podcast. We're getting loads of Facebook stuff at the moment. It's been quite good, actually. Loads of likes and things. So, what else have we got? Instagram, Bones Horror Pod. That's Jess looks after that, and that's doing pretty well. Or if you want to email us, boneshorrorpod@gmail.com. So we'll be back next week then with The Lighthouse and Starship Troopers.
Looking forward to that.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
forfeit. You're ignorant.